Hello, leader. Welcome back to the Fierce Factor podcast. I have taken over. You are tuning into a special podcast takeover series called Develop Your Voice of Impact. Over 3 Power Pack sessions, I'm going to teach you how to become a more confident, engaging, and dynamic communicator online, in person, and on stage. My name is Krista Donargo, and I am a strategic growth advisor who coaches alongside Kaylee and our expert advisory team at KLC. While my job is to help inspiring and intentional female entrepreneurs cross their next $1 million milestone this year, the cornerstone of work I do with our clients is built around guiding them to be more inspiring leaders in all aspects of their business and life. I spend my days coaching high-growth women on executive presence and persuasive communication. I've worked with Fortune 500 leaders, corporate CEOs, and incredibly talented female founders who are all brilliant at their craft, but not always as confident communicating in high-pressure situations. If you're someone who's ready to be more engaging on social, more inspiring for your team, and more magnetizing when you're in the spotlight, this week's podcast is for you. So let's dive in.
Krista, you work with incredibly accomplished med spa founders and healthcare professionals, people who have mastered their craft and built really successful practices. Yet you've said that many of them feel like they lose all their authority the moment a camera turns on or they're asked to speak publicly. What's the deeper issue here? Because I have a feeling this isn't really about camera skills at all.
Yeah, I think this is a great question. I think that the best way for me to answer this is to first tell you about my experience, my personal experience. When Kaylee first asked me to do these takeover episodes, I decided I was going to prepare a lot. Why? Because I wanted to sound professional. I wanted to do a great job. I wanted to, present as the expert as I am. And I'm a professionally paid speaker. But what I ended up attempting at was to completely wash myself out of my personality. I wrote this long script. I recorded myself doing it, perfectly polished. And Kaylee laughed and was like, I've completely lost you in this and your presence in this presentation. And isn't it funny that even someone as trained and skilled as you could be susceptible to this? And I thought it was such an incredible moment of realization that even people who do this all the time professionally are still subject to becoming self-conscious, so much so, or wrapped up in wanting to look a certain way or sound professional or be considered an expert, that they completely lose the thing that makes them special, which is them just being themselves and being relatable. So it's never a question of skill, it's more of a question of self-consciousness. Can you show up and be a little bit less self-conscious? Can you show up and just be there to give something?
I love that distinction between performance and service. It feels like there's a bigger conversation here about what authority actually looks like in luxury aesthetics and wellness. We're in an industry flooded with trends, hype, and viral moments, but you're saying that real authority is actually built differently. Talk to me about that. What does service-led leadership actually mean in this context?
I think it's really confusing to know what authority looks like in our industry at this point because there's so much noise. So what I like to help people center around is a framework of intention, insight, and invitation. I think that's really important to remember when we are putting information out there, either on social media or in podcasts. If we need to center around something that grounds us, I think first coming up with an objective of what do we want to do with what we are putting out there? What do we want people to do with it? What do we really want to give to people? Insight is all of our brilliance. What is our insight about that thing that we're talking about? And then lastly, an invitation. And that could be an invitation to either question something, or to think twice before you believe X, Y, and Z, or to look a little bit deeper into something, or to even come work with you. If something that you're saying is resonating with that person, then it's an invitation. Come work with me, or come visit us, or come see us for a consultation. So I think sometimes a framework like that can be really helpful in that authority mindset, as opposed to just following all the trends out there that are really impersonal and also really confusing. Because sometimes I see people put things out on social media and it's very charming, but I don't know what to do with it as a consumer or a potential client. So I think really organizing around that framework could help someone shift from performance to presence and really own that spot, really own the authority and their voice. So I think that framework could be helpful for something like that.
So what actually happens when founders don't make this shift? Because there's a real cost here that goes beyond just not liking social media. So what are you actually seeing founders lose when they stay stuck in that performance mindset? Whether that's over-explaining, abandoning content, or just not showing up at all.
So when someone is too concerned with how they sound, how professional they sound, how expert they sound, and they don't make the shift into what can I give back, then they run the risk of getting nervous. They run the risk of having the camera turn on and them going blank because they don't know how to act, they don't know what to say, and they're completely turned their attention inward to that self-consciousness. So my goal is to help remind people that when we surround ourselves, or when we center around our mission and our message and our gift that we have to give, then we are going to be less nervous. So when people don't make that shift, I see all sorts of stuff. People end up sounding like robots. You don't know how many women I've worked with that have been asked to, present on stage, and all of a sudden we'll be working together, they'll be chatting with me, they'll be charming and sparkly, and all of a sudden we'll be practicing their speech, and they'll go into robot mode and, hello, my name is Dr. So-and-so, and I'm here to talk about, and I'm like, whoa, what happened?
I've done that before.
I've done it. I mean, I told you, when you're nervous and you want to sound a certain way, our brain just, something clicks on. Like when I first started recording these podcasts, I was too polished.
Yeah.
I was too robotic. I was too perfect. And I think it just required me to remember who the heck I am, what I know, that this is stuff that I can talk about in my sleep. And I think we have to remind ourselves of that. The incredible women and intelligent women that I work with, they know their stuff. They know what they're talking about, and they have to remind themselves of that, because it's not about looking perfect. It's just about being yourself. It's just about sharing a little bit of yourself.
Yeah, I get that. Do you ever have women that you work with where because I know I have some clients like this too, where it almost is their personality to just be that way.
Yeah.
And so I feel like it's it's harder because it's not so much of just snap out of it in this moment and focus outwards.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think for some people that is kind of what they feel sets them apart too.
Sure. And there's tools. There are for sure tools that you can use to get people to loosen themselves up. If it's part of their personality and how they talk, then that's just how they talk. But there are tools that can help someone loosen up a little bit. There are things that you can implement into the things that you say that will make you a little bit more relatable. I remember I was working with Cece from Vain by Cece, and she's incredible. I absolutely love her. And she was doing a presentation on something that she was extremely knowledgeable about. And my note to her was, okay, let's make this a little bit more personal. Can you tell a story? And I'm going to talk a lot more about storytelling in the next episode, but storytelling is one incredible way where you can just drop your guard and become a relatable human being. Even if you sound a little bit robotic, if you share something personal and vulnerable, people will relate to you on another level. Another trick that I have is when I'm coaching with someone that's a little bit stiff, I'll say, okay, great. Now let's try this again. And you're going to pretend like you're talking to your best friend.
Oh, I
And
love
something
that.
completely shifts in them. They loosen up, they warm their tone up, they get funny all of a sudden. I'm like, oh, who knew you were funny? And so there's different tools and tricks that I use to get people to that place where they want to be, and they are a little bit more approachable and warm and personable. But I do want to say that we have to embrace who we are. So if we're not funny, it's okay that we're not funny. If we are not incredibly warm in our tone, that's okay too. I want everyone to really embrace who they are, because I do think that's what makes us stand apart. But it does require some coaching, people like me, to give you a few tools to help you out and bake in the humanness. If it's not just naturally there, you can bake it into your presentation.
I like that. It's funny because I see that a lot with some of the people that I work with too, where they're like, where they try to be the person who's like dancing on camera and like being a goofball, and I'm like, but you're not, and it's just not working for you, like you're not this like, I don't know, goofy all over the place person, and there's no need to pretend to be that way.
I think that actually brings up a really good point about like the trends of social media. And I think a lot of people come to me when they're like, Krista, I need to be really comfortable with the trends on social media because that's what the people want. And I'm like, are you sure that's what the people want? As a client of aesthetics and wellness, I don't want to see the person who's doing that stuff on me necessarily dancing and joking. Sure, if that's something that comes naturally to them and that's part of their brand, great. But what I'm really looking for is knowledge. What I'm really looking for is that vulnerability, that willingness to meet me where I'm at. So sometimes we overthink these things. We think we have to be trendy or doing all the things. All I need is just your presence.
Yeah.
I just need someone to show up as themselves and educate me. Tell me what I need to know. Tell me what is out there that is completely bogus. Tell me the treatment that I need if I'm suffering from something on my skin, or, that's what I need. I want guidance.
Yeah.
I want wisdom. I don't need the trends.
And I think such a big part of what you all teach at KLC is, building a business that you actually love. And I think such a big part of that is the clients or the patients that you attract. And I'm sure that showing up authentically in your social media, in the way that you speak and present, so much of that affects who you actually attract and bring into your practice. And so I also think that really just contributes to the overall
brand.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think so much of social media presence is about the brand and the audience that you want to cultivate. It's not just about the people that are out there. It's about, we get to control the narrative. We get to present our brand in a certain way, and really thinking about how we are aligning with our visibility and our brand and our values and our mission. Those are all things that I like to help people be aware of when they are going to be visible, when they are going to speak on stage, in a training, on social media, whatever it is. That alignment has to be there.
So tell me a little bit more about, we're talking about the context of, people who might get a little too particular, or have, because they're essentially trying to focus so much on showing up as an authority and to impress, that they lose their brand in some way. So what are some common mistakes that you actually see people making when they're trying to do that?
So some common mistakes that I see people making when they're trying to show up as an expert, whether it be on social media, on a podcast, something where they're visible in that way and they have that platform, is they use too much clinical jargon and they are not approachable because of that. Their audience doesn't understand what they're talking about. So they lose a lot of people just by getting too complicated, too medical. I see people over-explaining things that should be more concise. So people tend to ramble when they are not quite sure of the answer, or they are not quite sure what to say. I see people get really self-conscious because they don't make it about what they're offering. They make it about themselves. They make it about how they're going to look, how people are going to perceive them. I see people completely lose their personalities, the things that make them so sparkly and amazing and sets them and their brand and their company apart. We don't get to see that when they completely put that professional hat on and try to sound professional. I think it's something that happens to the best of us. And I don't think it's just people who are inexperienced. Like I said, it happened to me in the preparation of this podcast. I completely lost myself in the preparation because I over-prepared. I was too polished. I wanted to sound too perfect. And I think that's what you need a coach to remind you of, is that you are enough as you are. You do not need to be better than what you currently are. You just need to show yourself. You need to give your gift. You need to present it. And you also need to share, again, I'm going to say it again, you need to share personal experiences and stories about other people who have related to you in this way or who have done the treatment. And that's a huge part of it as well.
And I know that we spoke about how the giver's heart and focusing out on the actual message supports the way that you show up and makes you more authentic. But do you notice that service-led communication actually affects the quality of what that person is trying to communicate or teach as well?
Yeah. I'm thinking of one of the clients that I worked with. Oh, she's incredible, Raquel Frizella. And she wanted to relaunch a brand. She wanted to relaunch her brand. She was launching a skincare brand, and I think she was doing a bit of a relaunch for it. And she has an incredible business, very successful, very well-spoken. And what I realized when I was talking to her was that something that was missing from her brand was her personal touch. And I think that that's a common thing that happens, is that we get so good at what we do, we forget that the very thing that attracts people to us are the things that are imperfect and that make us human. And it wasn't until she told me a story about her experience being pregnant and her skincare issues when she was pregnant and the things that she struggled with personally did I realize that that was what was missing for her. So we worked together to take this very polished and beautiful brand and make it a little bit more relatable, a little bit more human through her story, through her vulnerability of sharing something that was a hard experience for her. And I think that that's a great example of someone who was able to use an experience to heighten an already incredible brand.
So if we're reframing all of this as a practice in leadership rather than a content creation or social media task, what does that look like day to day? If someone is listening and wants to step into this service-led approach, not just for social media, but in how they show up for their team, their clients, their industry, where would they start?
So in application or in practicality, we have to talk about things that we can actually do if we have to show up in social media, on a story, in a post, on a podcast, even in front of our team or for a client. We have to start thinking about things that we can do, first of all, beforehand to prepare ourselves to be that giver. So one of the things that I've coached people on before they put themselves on camera is give yourself an affirmation. I'm going to help one person today feel better. Or I'm going to debunk a very popular and dangerous myth out there. Or I'm going to change someone's mind about something. Or I'm going to normalize something for someone out there. So if you can just start with the gift of what you want to give, your intention, that's really, really powerful. So maybe it's just about starting with an intention. Start with an objective. What would you like to accomplish in this post? And it shouldn't be about you. It should be about being of service to someone else. Why do you want to get this information out there? So if you can focus on that first, either come up with a few opening lines for yourself. One thing I heard today that I can't get out of my head, or one fun fact I want to share with everyone, or if I could tell everyone to do just one thing for their skin, it would be this. Write a few of these down ahead of time. Give yourself something to work with, and then also start with your intention. What do you want to do with what you're saying? What is your objective with what you're saying? I think that's a really great applicable tool for anyone who's starting to venture into social media or podcasting and they really just want to get themselves out there. But also think about if there's anything that you find fun, if there's anything that you personally enjoy talking about, start there.
I feel like we've touched on this topic of social media a bunch too in this conversation. But I imagine that this service-led approach that we're talking about also applies beyond content creation. So where do you see this mindset shift actually showing up for the founders that you work with beyond just their content?
I think that when we are talking about communication with our audience, with our potential clients, with the public, we have to talk about brand, because brand is who we are and how we communicate with the world. It's our visibility. So it's so, so important. Now, where this whole shift of how do I sound to how can I help is really important in brand too. When we are willing to be vulnerable and share ourselves and be real with people, that is it has such a positive effect on our brand because it makes us more human. When I worked with Raquel Frizella in Voice of Impact, and she was specifically working on skincare. And as we were talking, we discovered that her connection to skincare and her passion for it was really personal. She had experienced something during her pregnancy, and she became obsessed with helping people with melasma because that was something that affected her. And so that was something that we were able to create as a story and to become a part of her brand. And I think that really it's a great example of how we were able to take an incredible brand and add something to it, add that personal touch, add that giver's heart. Because at the end of the day, she just wants to help people feel better. And so in sharing that story, it was such an incredible shift in the communication of what she was wanting to achieve with her brand.
Do you think the aesthetics and wellness industry is at an inflection point when it comes to communication? Because it feels like clients are getting savvier and more discerning. They can smell inauthenticity from a mile away. So how does that change what's actually required of founders who want to lead in the space?
It's so true. Our clients and customers are getting smarter and smarter. So the question becomes, how do I connect to them? How do I satisfy their needs? How do I show up authentically? And I think as much as we might want to avoid it, social media, podcasts, these are incredible platforms for founders. So it does require us to get comfortable with that. I do think that this is just as important as a good website. I think social media presence is where people start sometimes with the exploration of a business, and then they eventually land on a website. So really being confident with showing up frequently on social media is really, really important, which is why I created a Voice of Impact mini intensive called Confident Voice for Social Media and Podcasts, because I want to help founders not only get comfortable speaking on social media, but I want to help them figure out what they should be saying. I want to help them figure out how they want to present themselves. I want to help them just get confident with them giving the gift of their brilliance and their information and their true authentic selves without getting overly self-conscious, without overthinking, over polishing what they're doing on social media and on those platforms. I recently worked with a few clients in KLC Pop Leadership Academy who wanted to get more comfortable on camera. And these were two incredibly intelligent, gifted, talented women who just had a lot of self-consciousness around how they were sounding, how people were going to perceive them. and they would go blank. They would tell me they would press record and they would just go blank. And I think a lot of that was not because they weren't good at it or they weren't good at speaking. It was because they were putting so much pressure on themselves to perform that they forgot that the very reason they're talking about what they're talking about is to help people. So, when I roll up my sleeves when I coach people, and in those particular circumstances, I got down to work with them and I helped implement tools with them. I helped give them strategies, ideas. One of my clients, I even made her go run and change her shirt so we can record right then and there. So I think that while anyone can be nervous, of course, that's something that comes with the territory of putting yourself out there. It's so important and grounding to remember that it's more so about what you are offering and what you are giving. And that was a really eye-opening and incredible experience for me with these women, because I realized they weren't bad at social media. They weren't bad at putting themselves on camera. They were just overly self-conscious about how they were being perceived. Okay, goddess. If you're nodding your head, feeling the pull to expand your voice in a way that matches the level of leadership you desire, I have a brand new offer for you. For a limited time, KLC will be offering brand new Voice of Impact mini intensives. These are personalized one-on-one coaching sessions designed for high-performing founders who are done playing small with their communication. During these sessions, I will help you build a customized thought leadership plan, teach you how to command a room, communicate with authority, and use your voice as a strategic asset, whether you're leading your team, showing up online, or stepping onto bigger stages. If you're curious which path to take, I invite you to book a call with me. We'll talk through where you're at right now, what specific techniques we can implement to make a massive impact on your leadership voice and personal brand presence. You can head to klcconsultants.com/leadershipvoice to learn more about our Voice of Impact mini intensives and book your call in the show notes.